Welcome to Mind Shield. We protect the mind and pursue the truth. Let's get started.
Today, we're diving to something, well, it's pretty unsettling. It's an investigation by a group called Mind Shield into a phenomenon they call CNSI. And really, it all kicks off with one question. A question that might just change how you think about personal safety.
I want you to really think about this for a second. What if someone could be hurt, but there were no bruises, no visible wounds? What if they could be followed, but there were no footprints, no one tailing their car? And what if they could be completely destabilized, thrown off balance, without any kind of weapon that you or I could see? This is the question at the absolute core of what we're looking at today.
And look, this isn't just some sci-fi thought experiment. The reality is, thousands of people all over the world are reporting experiences that sound exactly like this. Their suffering is absolutely real. And the core argument from Mind Shield is that we have to take this seriously. We have to investigate the cause, no matter how strange it might sound at first. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll touch on this idea of invisible harm. Then we'll get into who Mind Shield is and define their key term, CNSI. After that, we'll look at the reports and see how they connect to some very real technologies. We'll also tackle the big one, the challenge of proof. And finally, we'll finish with a practical first step you can take.
Okay, so who's actually looking into all this? That brings us to Mind Shield. They frame themselves as an evidence-driven investigative project. And, when you're dealing with claims this extraordinary, that focus on hard evidence and a security mindset, well, it's not just important, it's everything.
Let's look at their mission because it's really telling. It's all about protecting mental autonomy, restoring neurological safety, and, this is key, conducting security-minded evidence-driven investigations. They're not just accepting claims at face value. And notice that last part. They push for accountability only when the evidence backs it up. That's a really important distinction.
All right, let's get to the main event. What exactly is CNSI? The most important thing to get right off the bat is that this is not a medical diagnosis. It's meant to be a neutral framework, a starting point for an investigation. So CNSI stands for Covert Neurosensory Intrusion. Think of it as a big umbrella term. It's designed to cover alleged covert technical interference, messing with a person's senses, their thoughts, their privacy, even their physical comfort. And that word alleged is doing some heavy lifting. It means this is the question, not the answer. It's the starting line for the investigation, not the finish.
And you can see here why they created this term. You've probably heard phrases like voice-to-skull or electronic harassment, right? They're really loaded terms. What CNSI does is it takes all these different labels and puts them under one neutral investigative roof. This way you can actually look at the patterns of what's being reported without getting sidetracked by all the baggage and theories that come with those other names.
Okay, this next part is where things get really interesting. We're going to connect these reports, these allegations people are making today, to actual documented history and technology. So when investigators comb through thousands and thousands of these reports, they start to see patterns. The same stories pop up again and again. Things like hearing voices or sounds that no one else can hear, a strange pressure in the head, very specific sensations like burning or tingling on one part of the body, brain fog that makes it hard to think, being woken up at the exact same time every night, and electronics just going haywire for no reason. The fact that so many different people report such similar things, that's a huge data point.
And look, this whole idea of invisible influence, it's not new. It's not science fiction. The paper trail is right there. For more than 20 years, the U.S. Embassy in Moscow was secretly blasted with low-level microwaves. Then, back in 1961, a scientist named Alan Frey published the first major paper proving that humans can actually hear microwave pulses. A little over a decade later, researchers at Walter Reed successfully transmitted spoken words directly into someone's head using microwaves. And this isn't ancient history. In 2003, the U.S. Navy was actively funding something called Project Medusa, designed to turn this very effect into a weapon.
So how does that even work? Well, the science behind it is called the microwave auditory effect, or MAE. Basically, when pulsed microwaves hit your head, they cause a tiny, super fast heating of the tissue. This creates a little pressure wave inside your skull that travels to your inner ear, your cochlea, and your brain interprets it as sound. It completely bypasses the eardrum. It's like the sound is just appearing inside your head. And this isn't just some dusty old research. It brings us right up to today. You've heard of Havana syndrome, right? The mystery illness affecting U.S. diplomats? Well, after a massive investigation, the U.S. National Academies of Science, we're talking top-tier scientists, concluded that the most plausible cause was directed pulsed radiofrequency energy. This isn't a fringe theory. It's the conclusion of a major scientific body looking at a very real, very serious national security issue.
So, with all that history, with all that science, why isn't this more widely understood? Well, that leads us to the biggest problem of all, the challenge of proof. There's this massive, massive gap between what a person is experiencing inside their own head and the kind of objective evidence you need to prove it in a lab or a courtroom.
Let's just look at this side by side. On the one hand, you have someone's subjective experience, hearing internal voices, feeling that tingling sensation, the brain fog. But on the other hand, for objective evidence, you need things you can measure. Verifiable radiofrequency emissions, a piece of hardware you can find, a biomarker in the blood. How do you connect the two? That is the billion-dollar question.
And that gap is just incredibly difficult to close for a few reasons. First, if you're hit with a pulse of energy, it's gone in an instant. There's no bullet casing to find. Second, the experience is internal. How can someone else verify what you're hearing in your own head? Third, there aren't really any laws on the books specifically for this kind of thing. And all of that together, it creates a perfect storm. It gives any potential perpetrator total plausible deniability and makes the victim look, well, not credible.
So with all those roadblocks, it can feel pretty hopeless. But it's not. There is a proactive, powerful strategy, and it all begins with one crucial first step: systematically documenting everything. If you or someone you know is going through something like this is probably the most powerful thing you can do. Start an incident log and be methodical. Number 1, date, time, and location. Be super precise. 2, describe exactly what you're feeling or experiencing. 3, note if anyone else is around and pay close attention to how your phone or computer is behaving. 4, grab any evidence you can, screenshots, photos, even video or audio recordings if it's safe. And 5, look around. Note any weird cars, strange sounds, anything that's out of place. Why do all this? Because this is how you turn a bunch of confusing, scary, subjective experiences into a factual baseline. Meticulous logging creates data, and over time, that data can reveal patterns. And those patterns, they are absolutely everything if you're ever going to get an investigation off the ground. It all comes down to this really simple, but I think very powerful idea. Before the cage can be broken, it has to be seen. All that documentation, all that logging, that is the very first step to making an invisible experience visible to others. It's how the search for answers begins. It's the path toward accountability. So you have to wonder, what patterns are out there, just waiting to be seen?